Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. Vincent Russo built his empire from nothing. At 43, he commanded respect in Boston's real estate development world, not through inherited wealth, but through calculated risk and unflinching determination. His father, a construction worker who died on site when Vincent was 15, left him with only one lesson. Trust is earned, never given. The Beacon Hill brownstone he shared with his wife Natalie and their son Leo represented everything he'd fought for. Vincent wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful. The kind of power that came from knowing people's weaknesses and having the patience to use that knowledge at precisely the right moment. "Dad, can you help me with this?" Leo, now 8, struggled with his science project on the dining room table. Vincent set down his phone and joined his son. Unlike his own father, Vincent made time for Leo. "Let me see what we're working with." Leo beamed as they assembled the solar system model together. Vincent had always been attentive, despite the demands of running Russo developments. He made sure to never miss Leo's baseball games or parent-teacher conferences. When he met Natalie Harmon 12 years ago, she was a vibrant art gallery assistant with dreams of opening her own space. He admired her ambition and fell for her free spirit, something he never allowed himself. He funded her gallery, the Harmon Collection, 5 years into their marriage. "Vincent, I've got that charity auction tonight," Natalie reminded him as she entered the room. At 38, she remained striking, sleek blonde hair, green eyes that could disarm even his most calculated business associates. "You've been having a lot of those lately," Vincent commented, not looking up from Leo's project. Natalie brushed her fingers across his shoulders. "The gallery's reputation depends on these connections. You understand that better than anyone." He did understand connections. He also understood patterns. The late nights, the changed passwords, the new clothes. Vincent didn't build his empire by ignoring details. That evening, after tucking Leo in, Vincent sat in his home office reviewing security footage. Not from his properties, but from the discreet system he'd installed throughout his home 6 months ago when his intuition first signaled trouble. His phone buzzed with a text from Douglas Ward, his head of security and former Army Ranger. Confirmed. Same hotel. Room 1214. Vincent didn't respond immediately. He opened his desk drawer and removed a small black notebook. Inside were detailed notes, dates, times, phone numbers, bank transactions. He'd been compiling evidence methodically, the way he approached everything in life. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and gazed out at the Boston skyline. Vincent had learned long ago that reaction without preparation was the mark of a weak man. And Vincent Russo was anything but weak. Chapter 2, Shattered Glass. 3 weeks passed as Vincent continued his surveillance. He learned that charity auctions typically meant meetings with Brendan Powell, a British art dealer who had partnered with Natalie's gallery 6 months ago. Brendan was everything Vincent wasn't: flamboyant, artistic, with an aristocratic background that opened doors in Boston's old money circles. He'd brought international attention to Natalie's gallery through his connections. And now, he was bringing something else to Vincent's wife. Leo's asking about summer camp options. Vincent mentioned casually over breakfast. "I was thinking the science program at Westridge." Natalie sipped her coffee. "I thought we agreed on the arts camp on Cape Cod. It's more well-rounded." "It's 3 hours away," Vincent replied. "And extremely exclusive for an 8-year-old. He needs to broaden his horizons," Natalie insisted. "Besides, Brendan's nephew attended last year and had an amazing experience. The connections those children make. Brendan seems to be influencing a lot of our family decisions lately." Vincent kept his voice measured. Natalie's eyes narrowed slightly. "He's a business partner with valuable insights. Is that all he is?" Vincent held her gaze. The silence between them stretched taut until Leo bounded into the kitchen, breaking the tension. That evening, Vincent received a report from his private investigator. Natalie and Brendan had been seen entering his downtown apartment together on multiple occasions. The investigator had also discovered a separate bank account Natalie had opened 3 months ago, with regular transfers occurring. Vincent made his decision. He contacted his lawyer, Miranda Foster, requesting an emergency meeting the following morning. "I need everything prepared within 2 weeks," Vincent instructed Miranda in her downtown office. "Full documentation of assets, custody arrangements, everything. But nothing filed yet." Miranda, who had handled Vincent's business affairs for a decade, nodded. "You're sure about this?" "I have video, financial records, hotel receipts," Vincent replied flatly. "And I want the Prescott Clause activated." Miranda's eyebrows rose. The Prescott Clause was a little-known provision Vincent had inserted into his prenuptial agreement. If infidelity could be proven with evidence gathered by a licensed investigator, certain protected assets would remain untouchable regardless of Massachusetts' equitable distribution laws. "Vincent, that's aggressive even for you," Miranda cautioned. "She's not just sleeping with him," Vincent said, sliding a folder across the desk. "They've been planning to open a new gallery in London using my investment money. The gallery I funded for her would be liquidated. Leo would attend boarding school in England." Miranda reviewed the documents, her expression grave. "This is thorough." "I don't leave things to chance," Vincent replied. "She gets nothing from me. Not the gallery, not alimony, nothing. Sole custody of Leo stays with me. Courts typically favor mothers. Not when the mother is planning to remove the child from the country without the father's consent," Vincent countered, tapping another document. Email exchanges between Natalie and the Ashford Academy in London. Enrollment papers already submitted for next fall. Miranda sighed. "I'll prepare everything." Vincent stood to leave. "One more thing. I want to know everything about Brendan Powell. Real history, real finances, real connections." Chapter 3. Calculated Moves. Vincent maintained an outward appearance of normalcy while Miranda worked. He attended Leo's school play, hosted a dinner party for business associates, and even accompanied Natalie to a gallery opening. During this time, the information on Brendan Powell arrived. The aristocratic background was partially fabricated. While he did come from money, his family had lost most of it 2 generations ago. His art world connections were real, but his personal finances were precarious, leveraged to maintain the appearance of wealth. Most interestingly, Brendan had a pattern. 3 previous relationships with gallery owners had ended with failed joint ventures and significant financial losses for his partners. Vincent began making his own moves. First, he transferred a significant portion of his liquid assets into offshore holdings inaccessible to Massachusetts courts. Next, he quietly purchased the building housing Natalie's gallery through a shell corporation. Finally, he arranged for a board meeting at Westfield Academy, Boston's most prestigious private school, where he pledged a substantial donation for a new science building. 2 days before Vincent planned to confront Natalie, she approached him in his home office. "We need to talk," she said, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. Vincent closed his laptop. "I'm listening." "I've been offered an amazing opportunity," she began. "A partnership with a gallery in London. It would mean relocating, at least part-time." "And Leo?" Vincent asked calmly. "There's a wonderful school." "You've already looked into schools?" Vincent's tone remained measured. Natalie nodded, seemingly relieved at his composure. "Ashford Academy. It's perfect for him, Vincent. This move would benefit all of us." "All of us," Vincent repeated. "Or you and Brendan?" The color drained from Natalie's face. "What are you talking about?" Vincent opened his desk drawer and removed the black notebook. June 15th, Ritz-Carlton, room 812. June 23rd, your gallery after hours. July 2nd, his apartment on Marlborough Street. "You've been spying on me?" Natalie's shock transformed into indignation. "I've been protecting my interests," Vincent corrected her. "And Leo's." "It's not what you think." "It never is," Vincent interrupted. "Here's what happens next. You're moving out tonight. The divorce papers are ready. The prenup's Prescott Clause has been activated based on the evidence I've collected." "The Prescott Clause?" Natalie blanched. "But that means you get nothing from me," Vincent finished for her. "Not the house, not alimony, not the gallery. You can't take my gallery." Natalie's voice rose. Actually, RSV Holdings purchased that building last month. Your lease is being terminated for renovation purposes. Vincent's expression remained impassive. As for Leo, I've already secured his place at Westfield Academy here in Boston. Sole custody stays with me. Natalie stood trembling. You planned all this. You taught me an important lesson, Natalie. Always see the betrayal coming. Vincent checked his watch. Douglas will help you pack essentials. You have 2 hours. I'll fight you, she warned. I'm still his mother. Fight me with what? Vincent asked. Your boyfriend's money? I've seen his financials. Or perhaps with the sympathy of the court when they learn you attempted to enroll our son in a foreign boarding school without my knowledge. When Natalie left that night, Leo was already asleep. Vincent told him the next morning that his mother had to travel for work. It wasn't until the divorce was finalized 3 months later that Leo understood she wouldn't be coming home. Chapter 4. New Realities. 6 months after the divorce, Vincent and Leo settled into a new routine. The brownstone had been sold, too many memories, and they relocated to a modern penthouse overlooking the harbor. Leo attended Westfield Academy, where his natural aptitude for mathematics flourished under the guidance of specialized teachers. Vincent had arranged his business affairs to allow more time with his son. Afternoons were spent helping with homework or practicing baseball in the park. Weekends often involved sailing, Vincent teaching Leo the patience and precision required to navigate changing winds. Natalie maintained visitation rights, but frequently canceled at the last minute. Her relationship with Brendan had continued, though their London plans had stalled due to financial complications. Why does a mom want to see me? Leo asked one Sunday evening after another canceled visit. Vincent set aside his work and sat beside his son on the couch. Sometimes adults make choices based on what they want rather than what's right. Your mother loves you, but she's learning how to balance her new life. He never spoke ill of Natalie to Leo, despite what she had done. Vincent's revenge wasn't about poisoning his son against his mother. It was about something far more comprehensive. Meanwhile, Vincent had Douglas maintain surveillance on Natalie and Brendan. Reports showed their relationship growing strained as financial pressures mounted. Without Vincent's backing, Natalie struggled to maintain her gallery's prominence. Brendan's creditors had begun calling more frequently as several investments failed to materialize. Mr. Russo, Douglas reported during their weekly security briefing, there's something you should know. Powell has been making inquiries about your current development projects. He's approached 3 of your business partners, claiming to represent potential European investors. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. Send me the names. And Douglas, have your contact at Interpol run another check on Powell. Focus on business dealings in France and Italy from 2015 to 2018. That evening, Vincent received a call from Patricia Harmon, Natalie's mother. You've ruined her life, Patricia accused without preamble. She's lost weight. She's anxious all the time. Hello, Patricia, Vincent interrupted calmly. I understand you're upset, but I didn't force Natalie to betray our marriage or attempt to take my son overseas. She made a mistake. People deserve second chances. Some mistakes can't be undone, Vincent replied. How was the new condo? Patricia paused, thrown by the question. What? The waterfront condo you purchased last month. 3 bedrooms, remarkable view. Quite an upgrade from your previous place. Oh, what do you know about that? I make it my business to know things, Vincent said smoothly. Especially when someone purchases a $2.3 million property shortly after receiving a large wire transfer from an account linked to Brendan Powell. The silence that followed told Vincent everything he needed to know. You knew, he concluded. You helped them plan it. Vincent, goodbye, Patricia. Give Natalie my regards. As Vincent ended the call, he added Patricia's name to his mental list. Vincent Russo never forgot a betrayal. Chapter 5. Shifting Tides. 2 years passed. Leo had grown into a thoughtful, resilient 11-year-old who excelled at school and baseball. His relationship with Natalie had stabilized into predictable monthly visits that he seemed to enjoy despite their brevity. Vincent's business empire had expanded significantly. Russo Developments now had projects in 3 states, including a massive waterfront revitalization in their home city. One evening, Vincent received an unexpected call from Brendan Powell. "Vincent, we should talk." Brendan's accented voice carried the forced confidence of a desperate man. "I don't believe we have anything to discuss," Vincent replied coldly. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. It concerns information that could be valuable to you." Vincent's instincts sharpened. "You have 5 minutes. My office tomorrow, 8 a.m. The following morning, Brendan arrived at Vincent's downtown office looking considerably less polished than in his gallery days. His custom suit hung loosely on his frame, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," Brendan began. Vincent didn't offer him a seat. For minutes remaining, Brendan cleared his throat. "I've been approached by someone interested in your Harbor Point development. They're willing to pay significantly for insider information about zoning contingencies and construction timelines. And you thought you'd warn me out of the goodness of your heart." Vincent's tone made it clear he wasn't buying it. "Not exactly." Brendan shifted uncomfortably. "I'm in a difficult financial position. The art market has been unforgiving lately. So you're offering to sell me information about someone trying to sabotage my project," Vincent clarified. "In exchange for what?" $200,000 would resolve my immediate issues." Vincent studied the man who had nearly destroyed his family. "Who approached you?" "Calvin Donovan from Meridian Properties. They've been trying to block your development through regulatory challenges, but the latest zoning approval hurt their position." Vincent had suspected Meridian's involvement in the recent regulatory hurdles. Having confirmation was valuable, but not worth what Brendan was asking. "Here's my counteroffer," Vincent said. "You provide me with all communication you've had with Donovan, including meeting dates and what information he requested. In exchange, I don't inform him that you attempted to double-cross him. That's not." Additionally, Vincent continued as if Brendan hadn't spoken, "You'll leave Boston. Permanently. Whatever arrangement you still have with my ex-wife can continue long distance if she chooses." "You can't force me to leave the city," Brendan protested. Vincent smiled thinly. 3 fraud investigations can. The statute of limitations on art forgery in Massachusetts is 5 years. Your activities in the Harmon Gallery between 2018 and 2019 would be of particular interest to the Attorney General's office. Brendan's face drained of color. "How did you?" "I know everything about you, Powell. Every falsified provenance, every inflated appraisal. I've known for years." Vincent glanced at his watch. "Your 5 minutes are up. Decision time." 2 days later, Brendan Powell left Boston for Europe. He told Natalie it was a temporary move to explore new markets, but they both knew he wouldn't return. Natalie appeared at Vincent's office unannounced the following week, fury evident in her expression. "What did you do to him?" she demanded. Vincent didn't look up from his computer. "I offered him a choice. He made it. You threatened him." "I reminded him of consequences," Vincent corrected. "There's a difference." Natalie sank into a chair, deflated. "Why now? After all this time?" Vincent finally met her gaze. "He came to me, Natalie, offered to sell out his new associates to finance your lifestyle a little longer." "I don't believe you." Vincent opened his desk drawer and removed a USB drive, sliding it across the desk. His recorded conversation with me. His emails with Donovan. The financial records showing how he's been bleeding your gallery dry. It's all there. Natalie stared at the drive, but didn't take it. "He was never going to open that London gallery with you." Vincent continued dispassionately. "The investors he claimed to have lined up don't exist. The exclusive properties he promised were already sold to other buyers." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Leo deserves better than watching his mother destroy herself for a con artist." Vincent leaned forward. "Make better choices, Natalie. If not for yourself, then for our son." As Natalie left, Vincent knew a new phase of his plan had begun. The foundation had been laid. Now it was time to build. Chapter 6. Calculated Risks. Over the next year, Vincent's surveillance reports on Natalie revealed significant changes. After Brendan's departure, she had focused on rebuilding her gallery's reputation. She secured a new, smaller space and cultivated relationships with emerging local artists rather than chasing international names. More importantly, she became more consistent with Leo, rarely missing scheduled visits and showing genuine interest in his activities. Vincent observed these developments with guarded optimism but remained vigilant. Meanwhile, Vincent's business continued to thrive. The Harbor Point development overcame the regulatory challenges and construction progressed ahead of schedule. Vincent had used the information from Brendan to neutralize Calvin Donovan, exposing his underhanded tactics to Meridian's board of directors. As Leo approached his 12th birthday, Vincent arranged a special celebration. He rented a small yacht for the weekend, inviting Leo's closest friends and, after some consideration, extended an invitation to Natalie. The day before the party, Vincent received an unexpected visitor at his office. "Mr. Russo, there's a Ms. Harmon here to see you," his assistant announced. Vincent assumed it was Natalie, but instead, Patricia Harmon entered his office. The years had not been kind to her, financial stress evident in her appearance. "Patricia," Vincent acknowledged coolly. "What brings you here?" "I've come to ask for your help," she said, her former haughtiness replaced by thinly veiled desperation. "I'm losing my condo." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "The one purchased with Brendan Powell's money? The money meant to finance taking my son away from me." Patricia flinched. "I made a terrible mistake. I believed what Natalie and Brendan told me about you, that you were controlling, that you were stifling her career. And now I know they manipulated me too." Patricia's hands trembled. "Brendan convinced me to invest my retirement savings in art that turned out to be worthless. The condo is in foreclosure." Vincent studied her, remembering her smug satisfaction during the divorce proceedings, her whispered comments to Natalie that he wasn't worth fighting for. "What exactly are you asking for?" "A loan," Patricia replied. "Just enough to keep the condo until I can sell it properly rather than at auction." Vincent opened his laptop and pulled up a document. "Did you know that RSV Holdings purchased your mortgage last month?" Patricia's eyes widened. "That's your company." "One of them," Vincent confirmed. "I've owned your debt for 28 days. "Why would you do that?" "Because I never leave things to chance, Patricia." Vincent turned the laptop toward her, displaying a contract. "Here's my offer. The mortgage will be restructured with manageable payments, and you'll retain ownership of the condo." Relief washed over Patricia's face. "Thank you, Vincent. I don't deserve." "In exchange," Vincent continued, "you'll sign this statement acknowledging your role in the conspiracy to separate me from my son." Patricia stiffened. "What would you do with that?" "Keep it," Vincent replied simply. "Unless you ever attempt to influence Leo against me or assist Natalie in violating our custody agreement." "You're blackmailing me." "I'm offering you a choice," Vincent corrected, "just as I offered one to Brendan." Patricia left with the restructured mortgage and her signature on Vincent's document. As she departed, Vincent made a note to have Douglas maintain surveillance on her as well. The yacht party for Leo's birthday went smoothly. Vincent watched with satisfaction as his son navigated social interactions with confidence, already showing signs of the man he would become. Natalie arrived punctually, bringing a thoughtfully chosen gift, a telescope, recognizing Leo's growing interest in astronomy. Vincent acknowledged her with a civil nod. As the children enjoyed the entertainment below deck, Natalie approached Vincent at the stern. "Thank you for including me today," she said quietly. Vincent kept his eyes on the horizon. "Leo wanted you here. I've been thinking about what you said last year, about making better choices." Natalie hesitated. "I'm selling the gallery." This caught Vincent's attention. "Why?" "I've been offered a curator position at the Bergman Museum. It's stable, prestigious, and would give me more regular hours for Leo." Vincent considered this information. The Bergman was indeed prestigious and conveniently located in Boston. "That sounds reasonable." "I also wanted to discuss revising our custody arrangement," Natalie continued. "Not to reduce your time with Leo," she added quickly, seeing his expression harden, "but to make it more flexible. Maybe some weeknight dinners in addition to weekends." "We can have the lawyers review options," Vincent conceded, surprising himself with his willingness to consider it. As Natalie walked away, Vincent wondered if people truly could change. He didn't believe in redemption, not really, but he recognized strategic adaptation when he saw it. That evening, as Vincent tucked an exhausted Leo into bed, his son asked a question that caught him off guard. "Dad, are you still angry at Mom?" Vincent considered his answer carefully. "I'm disappointed in choices she made, but anger doesn't help us move forward." "She seems different now," Leo observed. "People can change their behavior when they understand consequences," Vincent replied. "Get some sleep, champion. Big baseball game tomorrow." As he closed Leo's door, Vincent received a text from Douglas. "Powell back in Boston. Meeting with Sullivan tomorrow." Derek Sullivan was a real estate attorney who had represented several of Vincent's competitors. The timing was suspicious, especially with Harbor Point entering its final and most vulnerable phase of development. Vincent's instincts, the same ones that had alerted him to Natalie's betrayal, began to tingle with warning. Something was coming, and he needed to be prepared. Chapter 7: Gathering Storms. The following months brought significant developments. Natalie sold her gallery and began her position at the Bergman Museum. Their revised custody arrangement allowed Leo to spend Tuesday and Thursday evenings with her, which he seemed to enjoy. Vincent remained cautiously optimistic about these changes, but continued monitoring the situation. More concerning was Brendan Powell's return to Boston. Douglas's surveillance revealed regular meetings between Powell and Derek Sullivan, but the content of these meetings remained elusive. Vincent instructed Douglas to increase surveillance and authorize more aggressive information-gathering tactics. "They're planning something related to Harbor Point," Douglas reported after installing listening devices in Sullivan's office. "Powell claims to have documents that could derail the project's completion." Vincent frowned. "What kind of documents?" He wasn't specific, but Sullivan seemed impressed enough to arrange a meeting with Hayden Blackwell. Vincent's eyes narrowed at the name. Blackwell headed the Urban Development Committee that had approved Harbor Point's final permits. If Powell and Sullivan were approaching him, they likely sought to challenge those approvals. "I need to know what Powell has," Vincent instructed, "and where he got it." 3 days later, Vincent received his answer in the form of photographs showing Powell and Natalie's mother, Patricia, meeting at an out-of-the-way restaurant. The surveillance team captured images of Patricia handing Brendan a large envelope. Vincent immediately called Patricia. "We had an agreement," he said when she answered. "Vincent, I can explain. I'll be at your condo in 30 minutes. Vincent cut her off. "Be there." When he arrived, Patricia looked terrified. "He threatened to expose my financial problems to Natalie if I didn't help him," she blurted before Vincent could speak. "What did you give him?" Patricia wrung her hands. "Some old papers from when you and Natalie were married. Things she kept in a box at my house during the divorce." "What kind of papers, Patricia?" Vincent's voice was dangerously calm. "Preliminary designs for Harbor Point. Natalie had them because you worked on the concept at home sometimes. Brendan said they proved you stole the design from another architect." Vincent processed this information. The original Harbor Point concept had indeed been collaborative, created with an architect named Russell Foreman who had later moved to Chicago without pursuing the project. Vincent had substantially modified the designs and properly acquired all rights, but Powell could potentially create problems by misrepresenting the timeline. "Did Natalie know you gave these documents to Powell?" Patricia shook her head emphatically. "No, she doesn't even know he's back in Boston. I didn't tell her because I knew she was trying to make things right with you for Leo's sake." Vincent believed her, which presented both a problem and an opportunity. "Here's what happens now," Vincent said. "You're going to call Powell and tell him you found more documents. Arrange to meet him tomorrow." "And then what?" "Then I'll handle Powell," Vincent replied. "Permanently." The next day, Patricia met Brendan Powell at the designated location, a coffee shop near the waterfront. Vincent watched from his car as Powell accepted another envelope from Patricia, his expression smug. As Powell left the coffee shop, Douglas and 2 other security team members intercepted him, guiding him firmly to a waiting SUV where Vincent sat in the back seat. "Hello, Brendan." Vincent greeted him as the vehicle pulled away. "We need to talk." Powell's smugness evaporated. "I have nothing to say to you, Russo." "That's unfortunate," Vincent replied, "because I have quite a bit to say to you." The SUV drove to an empty warehouse owned by one of Vincent's shell companies. Inside, a single chair stood in the center of the concrete floor. "What is this?" Powell asked, fear creeping into his voice as Douglas guided him to the chair. "This is where you make another choice," Vincent explained, remaining perfectly calm. "You can return all documents you receive from Patricia, cease all communication with Sullivan and Blackwell, and leave Boston today. Or Douglas can explain the alternatives." Douglas placed a hand on Powell's shoulder, applying just enough pressure to communicate the threat. "You're insane," Powell sputtered. "You can't just threaten people like this." Vincent stepped closer. "3 years ago, you conspired with my wife to steal my son and my money. You manipulated her mother into assisting you. When that failed, you returned to try again with these documents." Vincent removed the envelope from Powell's jacket pocket. "Did you really think I wouldn't be prepared?" Powell swallowed hard. "Sullivan already has copies." "I know," Vincent replied. "But without you to testify about their provenance, they're meaningless. And you won't be testifying." "You can't kill me," Powell whispered. "You wouldn't." Vincent actually laughed. "Kill you? That would be messy and unnecessary. No, I'm going to destroy you methodically, starting with the evidence of art fraud I've compiled, then the tax evasion charges, then the outstanding warrants in Italy." Vincent handed Powell a phone. "Call Sullivan. Tell him you're leaving the country on urgent business and can't proceed with the Harbor Point matter." Powell's hands shook as he made the call, delivering the message as instructed. "Good," Vincent said when the call ended. "Now, Douglas will drive you to the airport. Your passport and a one-way ticket to London are waiting. If you ever return to Boston or contact Natalie or Patricia again, all that evidence goes to authorities in 3 countries." As Powell was escorted out, Vincent turned his attention to the next phase of his plan. Chapter 8. The Wedding Day. 6 months passed. Harbor Point was completed on schedule, becoming the crown jewel of Vincent's real estate portfolio. Leo continued to thrive, his relationship with Natalie stabilizing into something that, while not the traditional family Vincent had once envisioned, seemed to benefit their son. Vincent had just returned from a business trip to Chicago, where he had secured Russell Foreman's formal acknowledgement of Vincent's full ownership of the Harbor Point designs, when he received an unexpected invitation. Natalie was getting married. Her fiancé, Martin Sullivan, was Derek Sullivan's younger brother and a professor of art history at Boston University. They had apparently met through her work at the Bergman Museum and had been dating for nearly a year, a fact Vincent was aware of through his continued light surveillance, but had not interfered with. "Are you going to Mom's wedding?" Leo asked over dinner the evening the invitation arrived. Vincent considered the question. "Would you like me to?" Leo shrugged. "It might be weird, but Martin's okay. He knows a lot about space stuff, too." Vincent noted his son's apparent approval of the man who would become his stepfather. "Then I'll consider it." 2 days later, Vincent received a call from Natalie. "You don't have to come," she said after an awkward greeting. "I just thought, for Leo's sake." "I appreciate the invitation," Vincent replied neutrally. "Leo seems to think highly of your fiancé." "Martin's different," Natalie said quickly. "He's honest and stable. He's good for me, and he genuinely cares about Leo." Vincent detected the implicit comparison to Brendan Powell. "I'm glad to hear that. There's something else," Natalie continued. "My mother is insisting on handling certain aspects of the wedding. I'm worried she might make things uncomfortable if you attend." "Patricia and I have an understanding," Vincent assured her, thinking of the document Patricia had signed. "It won't be a problem." When the wedding day arrived, Vincent dressed carefully in a tailored gray suit. Leo looked handsome in his junior groomsman attire. "Ready, champion?" Vincent asked as they prepared to leave. Leo nodded. "Mom said I can sit with you during the reception if I want to." The ceremony was held at the Bergman Museum's Sculpture Garden, a tasteful venue that reflected Natalie's position there. Vincent sat discreetly near the back, observing the proceedings with detached interest. Martin Sullivan appeared genuinely besotted with Natalie, his vows sincere and unaffected. For a brief moment, Vincent felt an unexpected pang, not of jealousy or regret, but of recognition that some chapter in his life was truly closing. He had moved on from Natalie long ago, but seeing her begin this new chapter formalized that distance in a way divorce papers hadn't. The reception began smoothly enough. Vincent kept to himself, exchanging polite nods with guests who recognized him. Leo performed his duties admirably, then joined Vincent at his table for dinner. It was during the meal that Patricia Harmon, clearly having consumed several glasses of champagne, approached their table with the wedding planner. "You need to move," she announced loudly. "These tables are for family and close friends." Vincent remained seated, placing a calming hand on Leo's shoulder. "Leo and I were invited, Patricia, by Natalie." The wedding planner looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Harmon, perhaps." "They can sit in the back," Patricia insisted, gesturing toward some hastily arranged tables near the kitchen entrance. "We need this space for Martin's colleagues." Several nearby guests turned to watch the confrontation. Vincent noticed Natalie across the room, engaged in conversation and unaware of the situation. "We're fine here," Vincent replied calmly. Patricia's face flushed with alcohol and bitterness. "Look at them," she said to the wedding planner, but clearly intending to be overheard. "They look so cheap compared to Martin's family." Vincent couldn't even wear a proper tuxedo. Leo's face reddened with embarrassment. Vincent squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. Martin Sullivan, noticing the commotion, approached the table. "Is everything all right?" "Your new mother-in-law seems to have seating concerns," Vincent explained evenly. "They shouldn't be at this table," Patricia insisted. "They shouldn't even be here at all." Martin frowned. "Patricia, Vincent, and Leo are welcome guests. Natalie and I specifically discussed. Just be grateful you're invited at all." Patricia snapped at Vincent. "After what you did to Natalie's gallery." Vincent remained impassive, but Leo looked increasingly distressed by his grandmother's behavior. "Leo, why don't you get some air?" Vincent suggested quietly. "I want to stay with you, Dad," Leo replied, his voice small but determined. At that moment, Natalie joined the group, quickly assessing the situation. "Mother, that's enough. Vincent and Leo are sitting exactly where they're supposed to be." Patricia turned to her daughter. "You're too soft, Natalie. Always have been. You should have taken him for everything when you had the chance." An uncomfortable silence fell over the nearby tables. Vincent noticed Derek Sullivan watching from across the room, his expression calculating. Vincent stood slowly. "Leo, and I should probably—" "No," Natalie interrupted. "This is Leo's mother's wedding. He deserves to be here without drama." She turned to Patricia. "Mother, I think I need to take a break. Maybe get some coffee." As a waiter led a protesting Patricia away, Martin apologized profusely to Vincent and Leo. "I'm so sorry about that. Please, stay and enjoy the reception." Vincent nodded in acknowledgement, but the damage had been done. Leo sat silently, picking at his food, clearly uncomfortable with the attention their table had received. An hour passed. The cake was cut, speeches were given, and dancing began. Vincent was considering making a discreet exit with Leo when he noticed a black limousine pull up outside the venue's floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone vibrated with a text from Douglas. "In position." Vincent checked his watch. Perfect timing. The limousine driver, Douglas in disguise, entered the reception hall in a crisp uniform. He scanned a room, then walked directly to Vincent's table, ignoring the curious stares. Douglas approached Leo, offering a formal bow. "Young Mr. Russo?" Leo looked up in surprise. "Yes. Sir, it's time," Douglas announced in a clear, carrying voice. The music seemed to fade as guests turned to watch the exchange. Vincent calmly stood, straightening his jacket. "Is everything ready?" Vincent asked Douglas. "Yes, sir. All arrangements have been confirmed." Natalie approached, confusion evident on her face. "Vincent, what's going on?" Vincent turned to her with a slight smile. "Leo's surprise." "Surprise?" Leo echoed, looking between his father and Douglas. Vincent knelt beside his son. "Remember how you said you wished you could see a real rocket launch? Cape Canaveral called this morning. They had a last-minute viewing opportunity open up for tomorrow's launch. The jet is waiting." Leo's eyes widened in disbelief and excitement. "Really? We're going to see a rocket launch?" "If we leave now," Vincent confirmed. The room remained silent as this exchange unfolded. Patricia, who had returned to the reception, stood frozen mid-gossip. Derek Sullivan's calculating expression had transformed to one of grudging respect. But, Mom's wedding, Leo said, looking at Natalie uncertainly. Vincent watched his ex-wife carefully. This was the moment of truth. Would she revert to putting her desires first, or had she truly changed? Natalie smiled at Leo. You should go, sweetheart. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. Are you sure? Leo asked. Absolutely, Natalie affirmed. You can tell me all about it when you get back. Vincent stood, extending his hand to Martin. Congratulations again. We'll see you both when we return. As Vincent and Leo followed Douglas toward the exit, whispers erupted throughout the room. Patricia's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Derek Sullivan drained his champagne glass with a grimace. Vincent placed his hand on Leo's shoulder as they walked out. The boy practically vibrated with excitement, previous embarrassment forgotten. This was Vincent's true revenge, not just surviving Patricia's attempt to humiliate them, but transforming the moment into a triumph that everyone in that room would remember. As they settled into the limousine, Leo turned to his father. Did you really just find out about the rocket launch today? Vincent smiled. Let's just say I like to be prepared for all possibilities. The limousine pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a reception where Vincent Russo had once again demonstrated that he was not a man to be underestimated or betrayed. Chapter 9, Legacies. 5 years passed. Leo had grown into a confident 17-year-old, excelling academically and as captain of his school's baseball team. Vincent had continued to build his real estate empire, now spanning 6 states with projects that had redefined urban development on the East Coast. Natalie and Martin's marriage appeared stable. They had a 3-year-old daughter, Emma, whom Leo adored. The custody arrangement had evolved as Leo grew older, allowing him more agency in deciding when to visit each parent. Vincent maintained his vigilance, but had scaled back active surveillance as Natalie consistently demonstrated commitment to Leo's well-being. Patricia Harmon had moved to Florida after selling her condo, maintaining minimal contact with the family. Brendan Powell had never returned to Boston, eventually settling in Berlin, where he maintained a modest gallery far removed from his previous ambitions. On a crisp autumn morning, Vincent sat in his home office reviewing plans for his most ambitious project yet, a sustainable urban community in a formerly industrial area of the city. Leo knocked and entered, looking uncharacteristically serious. Dad, can we talk? Vincent set aside his work immediately. Of course. Everything okay? Leo sat across from him. Mom and Martin invited me to spend Christmas with them in London this year. Martin's teaching a semester abroad program, and they'll be there through January. I see, Vincent replied neutrally. And what do you want to do? I'd like to go, Leo admitted, but I don't want to leave you alone for Christmas. Vincent studied his son, nearly a man now, thoughtful and considerate in ways that made him immensely proud. I appreciate your concern, but you should go. It'll be a great experience. You're sure? Leo pressed. Because Martin mentioned there's a prestigious winter academic program I could participate in while we're there. It would look good for college applications. Vincent felt a momentary flash of the old suspicion. What kind of program? Astrophysics at Imperial College, Leo explained. It's only 2 weeks, but they typically only accept college freshmen. Martin pulled some strings because of my advanced math scores. Vincent relaxed. Leo's passion for astrophysics had developed naturally over the years, encouraged equally by Vincent and, to his credit, by Martin, who had connections in academic circles. When would you leave? Vincent asked. December 20th, Leo replied. Back January 12th. Vincent nodded. I'll have Douglas arrange the travel details. Actually, Leo hesitated. Mom already booked the tickets. Business class. All right, Vincent conceded. But I'll still have Douglas coordinate security protocols. Leo smiled, used to his father's protective measures. Thanks, Dad. As Leo stood to leave, Vincent had a thought. Leo, did your mother ever tell you about the day she and I met? Leo shook his head. Not really. Why? It was at an art exhibition at Westover Gallery. I was there because I just purchased the building. Vincent leaned back in his chair. Your mother was working as an assistant curator. She spent 20 minutes explaining why a particular sculpture was meaningful, even though most people just walked past it. Was it a good sculpture? Leo asked. Objectively? Probably not. But she made me see something in it that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Vincent smiled slightly at the memory. That was her gift, seeing value where others didn't. She's applied that same perspective to her relationship with you all these years. Leo seemed surprised by this rare moment of Vincent speaking positively about Natalie. Why are you telling me this now? Because understanding why people make the choices they do is important, Vincent explained. I've taught you to be vigilant, to recognize patterns, to protect yourself from betrayal. Those are valuable lessons. But there's value in recognizing growth too. The following weekend, Natalie and Martin joined Vincent and Leo for dinner at Vincent's penthouse, a quarterly tradition they had established to discuss Leo's academic progress and future plans. These dinners had evolved from tense, awkward affairs to reasonably comfortable co-parenting discussions. After dinner, while Leo showed Martin his latest telescope setup on the balcony, Natalie lingered in the living room with Vincent. "Thank you for approving the London trip," she said. "It means a lot to Leo." Vincent nodded. "The academic program sounds worthwhile." "It is," Natalie confirmed. Martin's colleague who runs it was impressed with Leo's application. "He's worked hard," Vincent acknowledged. A moment of silence passed between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted with history. "Vincent," Natalie began hesitantly, "after all these years, I have to ask, did you always have the rocket launch plan for my wedding day? Or was that spontaneous?" Vincent smiled slightly. "What do you think?" "I think you never leave anything to chance," Natalie replied. "My mother was horrible to you that day, but somehow you turned it into Leo's most cherished memory." "Patricia made her choices," Vincent said simply. "I made mine." Natalie studied him. "You never told Leo about Brendan, about what really happened." "Leo doesn't need to know every detail," Vincent replied. "He knows what matters, that we both love him, even if we couldn't make our marriage work." "That's surprisingly generous of you." Vincent shrugged. "It's not generosity. It's strategy. Leo's happiness has always been the priority." As Martin and Leo returned from the balcony, Vincent observed the easy rapport between them. Martin had proven to be a steady influence in Leo's life, encouraging his academic interests without trying to replace Vincent as a father figure. Later that night, after everyone had left, Vincent received a call from Douglas. "The Sullivan brothers met today," Douglas reported. "Derek still seems interested in challenging the zoning for the Riverside project." "Expected," Vincent replied. "Continue monitoring, but don't interfere yet." "Yes, sir." And Mrs. Sullivan's mother made another large withdrawal from her Florida account. Third one this month. Vincent frowned slightly. "Interesting. Keep me informed." As he ended the call, Vincent walked to his office and opened a desk drawer. Inside lay a black notebook, newer than the one he'd used to document Natalie's betrayal, but serving the same purpose. Vincent added a brief note about Patricia's unusual financial activity. Vincent Russo never forgot a betrayal, and he never stopped watching for the next one. But he had learned that vengeance, like all things of value, required patience and precision. Sometimes the greatest revenge wasn't immediate destruction, but calculated restraint, knowing you could strike at any moment, but choosing the perfect time. The Riverside project would proceed regardless of Derek Sullivan's maneuvering. Patricia's financial desperation would eventually lead her back to Boston, where Vincent would be waiting. And Leo would continue to grow into a man who understood both vigilance and compassion, the most valuable legacy Vincent could provide. Vincent closed the notebook and returned it to the drawer. Some battles were worth fighting immediately. Others improved with time, like fine wine or carefully laid investments. He walked to the window, gazing out at the city he had helped reshape. From betrayal had come strength, from loss had come focus. Vincent had not merely survived. He had transformed every setback into advantage, every threat into opportunity. That was the true power of patience. That was the ultimate revenge. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Weight of Memory. The mahogany desk gleamed under the soft lighting of Harvey Stout's corner office on the 42nd floor of Stout Dynamics Tower. At 38, he commanded one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Silicon Valley, his empire built from nothing but determination and an unshakable belief in his own worth. The irony of his company's name wasn't lost on him, taking the family surname that had once been used to shame him. Harvey's fingers drummed against his leather chair as he reviewed quarterly reports. Revenue was up 40%, and their new AI-driven logistics platform had just secured contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, San Francisco sprawled beneath him like a conquered territory. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Stout, your 4 o'clock is here. Send him in, Marcus." Clark Fisher, his chief operating officer and closest friend since MIT, entered with his characteristic easy grin. At 6'3", with prematurely silver hair, Clark had the kind of presence that made boardrooms pay attention. He'd been with Harvey since the beginning, when they'd worked 18-hour days in a cramped garage. "The Patterson deal is signed," Clark announced, dropping into the chair across from Harvey's desk. "That's $12 million in guaranteed revenue over the next 3 years. Harvey nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. It always drifted this time of year, late October, when the autumn air carried memories he'd rather forget. "You're thinking about them again," Clark observed, knowing his friend better than anyone. "It's been 15 years, Harv. You built something incredible. You won." Harvey's jaw tightened. "Winning isn't about success, Clark. It's about justice." Clark leaned forward. "You were 23, broke and homeless. Now you're worth $300 million and growing. If that's not justice, what is?" Harvey stood and walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the glass. At 23, he'd been a different person, trusting, naive, believing that blood meant something. The memory hit him like a physical blow, standing in his parents' living room in their modest Sacramento home, watching his father Charles hand over the inheritance documentation to his golden boy, brother Billy. "Harvey doesn't have the business sense," his father had said, not even looking at him. "Billy's got real plans. You just wasted on your computer fantasies." But it was his mother Patricia's words that had cut deepest. "He's our real son. We should have aborted you before birth." The slap that followed had stung less than the finality in her voice. Harvey had been adopted at 3 months old, something he discovered accidentally at 16 when he needed his birth certificate for a driver's license. His parents had never told him, but explained why Billy, 2 years younger and born to them naturally, had always been the favorite. "The inheritance was rightfully mine," Harvey said quietly. "Grandpa Joe left it to me specifically because he saw something in me that they couldn't." Clark joined him at the window. "Your grandfather would be proud of what you built without their money. $150,000 doesn't sound like much now, but it could have changed everything back then. Instead, Billy used it to open his first restaurant." Harvey's voice carried no emotion, but Clark could see the tension in his shoulders. The irony was exquisite. Billy had used Harvey's inheritance to start Stout Family Kitchens, eventually expanding to 47 locations across California and Nevada. Meanwhile, Harvey had scraped together enough money washing dishes and coding freelance websites to eventually launch his first app from a studio apartment in Oakland. "Any word from your private investigator?" Clark asked. Harvey returned to his desk and opened a locked drawer, retrieving a thick manila folder. "Trevor McKinney sent his final report yesterday. Billy's restaurants are hemorrhaging money. Bad management, oversaturation in failing markets, and some questionable real estate investments. They've got maybe 6 months before bankruptcy. And your parents? Leveraged everything to help him expand last year. Their house, their retirement savings, everything." Harvey opened the folder, revealing financial documents, photographs, and detailed reports. "They're about to lose it all. Clark studied his friend's expression. Harvey had the kind of face that could be warm and charming in boardroom presentations, but could turn ice cold when crossed. Right now, it was unreadable. "What are you thinking?" Harvey closed the folder and locked it away. "I'm thinking that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. They threw away their only son for someone they thought was golden. Now their golden boy is about to drag them down with him." "Harvey, I built this company from nothing, Clark. Every rejection letter, every failed pitch, every night sleeping in my car because I couldn't afford rent, it all led to this moment. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their approval. But justice." Harvey's eyes hardened. Justice is something else entirely. As the sun set over the Bay Area, casting long shadows across his office, Harvey Stout began to plan. Not for expansion or new products or market dominance, but for something far more personal. 15 years ago, his family had written him off as worthless. Soon, they would learn the true cost of that decision. Chapter 2. The Golden Sun's Fall. Billy Stout sat in his empty restaurant at 2 in the morning, surrounded by towers of unpaid invoices and final notices. At 36, he'd lost the boyish charm that had once made him his parents' pride and joy. His face was puffy from stress and too much drinking. His clothes rumpled from another sleepless night trying to save his dying empire. Stout Family Kitchens had once been his pride, a chain of upscale casual dining restaurants that promised authentic family recipes passed down through generations. The marketing had been brilliant, the food decent, and for nearly a decade, success had seemed inevitable. But Billy had never been good with numbers or long-term planning. Those skills belonged to the brother he'd helped destroy. He remembered Harvey differently than their parents did. While Charles and Patricia saw Harvey as the awkward, antisocial adoptee who spent too much time with computers, Billy remembered someone who'd helped him with homework, taught him how to ride a bike, and once spent his entire summer job savings to buy Billy a guitar for his 14th birthday. The guilt had been eating at him for years, but it was easier to drown it in expansion plans and his parents' constant praise. "You're building something real," his father would say. "Not like your brother with his silly apps and websites." Now, Billy stared at the foreclosure notice for the flagship location. 3 months behind on rent, suppliers demanding payment up front, and employees quitting daily for jobs that actually paid on time. The borrowed money, Harvey's inheritance money, was long gone, swallowed by poor decisions and an economy that had shifted away from mid-tier dining. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Any word from the investors?" Billy had been lying to his parents for months, telling them he was in talks with venture capitalists and angel investors. In reality, no one wanted to touch a failing restaurant chain with 47 locations bleeding cash in secondary markets. The worst part was knowing Harvey had been right about everything. During those few family dinners they'd all attended in their early 20s before the final falling out, Harvey had warned him about overexpansion, about the risks of borrowed growth, about building sustainable business models. Billy had dismissed it as jealousy. "You don't understand the restaurant business," Billy had said smugly. "This isn't some tech startup that exists in the cloud." Harvey had just nodded, that same unreadable expression he'd worn since childhood when faced with their parents' favoritism. Billy's laptop chimed with an email notification. Another creditor, another demand for payment. But this one caught his attention. The sender was someone named Trevor McKinney from McKinney Investigations. Subject, business inquiry, potential investment opportunity. Billy opened it with shaking hands. Asterisk, Mr. Stout. I represent a client interested in distressed restaurant properties. We've been monitoring Stout Family Kitchens and believe there might be an opportunity for a mutually beneficial arrangement. Would you be available for a phone call tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Best regards, Trevor McKinney, asterisk. Billy's heart raced. This could be it. The miracle he'd been praying for. He quickly typed a response confirming the call, then immediately dialed his parents. "Dad, I think I found someone. An investor interested in the restaurants." Charles Stout's voice crackled through the phone from the modest Sacramento home that was currently in pre-foreclosure. "Thank God, son. Your mother and we can't lose the house, Billy. It's all we have left." "I know, Dad. I'll fix this. I promise." But even as Billy said the words, part of him wondered if this was just another dead end. He'd gotten 3 similar emails over the past month, all from people who'd ultimately wanted to buy his assets for pennies on the dollar. Still, he had to try. His parents had sacrificed everything for him. Their retirement, their financial security, their relationship with Harvey. The least he could do was fight until the very end. As Billy locked up the empty restaurant and walked to his car, a BMW he could no longer afford, he thought about the brother he'd helped his parents destroy. Harvey had started with nothing and built an empire. Meanwhile, Billy had started with everything and was losing it all. The irony wasn't lost on him, but it was far too late for apologies. Miles away, in his penthouse apartment overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, Harvey Stout set down his phone after confirming the meeting through Trevor McKinney. Phase 1 of his plan was already in motion. Tomorrow, Billy would learn that some debts could never be repaid. Chapter 3: The Reunion. The elevator climbed silently toward the executive floors of Stout Dynamics Tower as Charles and Patricia Stout stood rigidly side by side. Both in their late 60s, they looked older than their years. Charles with his hunched shoulders and trembling hands. Patricia with deep worry lines etched around eyes that had once sparkled with confidence. They'd driven down from Sacramento in their 15-year-old Honda Civic, the same car they kept running with duct tape and prayers since losing their newer vehicles to creditors. The 42-story tower rising above them represented a world they'd never imagined their adopted son could inhabit. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia whispered, clutching her worn purse. Charles straightened his cheap suit jacket, the only one he owned that wasn't completely threadbare. "We don't have a choice. Billy says this Harvey Stout might be willing to buy the restaurants as a package deal. It's our only shot at saving the house." Neither of them had made the connection. Stout was a common enough name, and the idea that their discarded son could have built something this magnificent was simply incomprehensible to them. The elevator doors opened onto a gleaming reception area where Marcus Wright, Harvey's assistant, greeted them with professional courtesy. At 28, Marcus was everything Harvey looked for in employees: brilliant, loyal, and utterly discreet. He'd been briefed on today's visitors and their significance. "Mr. and Mrs. Stout, Mr. Harvey will see you now." They followed Marcus through corridors lined with modern art and floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the bay. Employees moved with purpose and energy, the kind of environment that radiated success and innovation. The double doors to Harvey's office opened, and Patricia gasped. Harvey rose from behind his desk, 38 years old, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than his parents' monthly Social Security income. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his face lean and confident, bearing only the faintest resemblance to the broken young man they'd cast out 15 years ago. For a moment, nobody spoke. The recognition dawned slowly on Charles's face, then Patricia's. Their mouths opened in shock, then quickly snapped shut as the full implications hit them. "Hello, Mom. Dad." Harvey's voice was calm, professional, with just the slightest emphasis on the familial terms. "Please have a seat." Charles remained frozen, but Patricia found her voice first. "Harvey? But we came here to meet with Harvey Stout about Billy's restaurants. And here I am." Harvey gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "You wanted to discuss a potential investment in Stout Family Kitchens. I'm all ears." They sat slowly, both looking like they'd seen a ghost. Harvey returned to his chair and pulled out the folder he'd shown Clark the day before. "I've done my due diligence on your family's business ventures," Harvey continued, opening the folder with deliberate precision. 47 locations, currently operating at a net loss of approximately $1.2 million per month. Outstanding debts totaling $8.7 million. And from what I understand, you've personally guaranteed many of these loans using your home as collateral. Charles's face had gone pale. How did I know?" Harvey smiled, and it wasn't kind. "I make it my business to know about interesting investment opportunities. Though I have to say, the irony here is remarkable." Patricia leaned forward, her voice taking on the pleading tone she'd once used when Billy got in trouble at school. "Harvey, if you're willing to help Billy, we can work something out. We know you're successful now." "Successful?" Harvey repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. Yes, I suppose I am. Built from nothing, of course. No family money to jumpstart things. No inheritance from Grandpa Joe to cushion the failures. The mention of the inheritance made both parents flinch. Charles cleared his throat. That was a long time ago. We did what we thought was best for the family. For the family, Harvey echoed. Tell me, how has the family investment worked out? Billy's restaurants are failing. Your home is in foreclosure, and you're sitting in my office begging for help from the son you disowned. He leaned back in his chair. I'd say your judgment regarding family investments was somewhat flawed. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. We made mistakes, Harvey. We know that now. But Billy, he's your brother. Surely you wouldn't let family suffer when you have the means to help. The word family hung in the air like a curse. Harvey stood and walked to the window, his back to them. Family, he said softly. I remember being 23 and believing in that word. I remember thinking that adoption meant I belonged somewhere, that love could overcome biology. He turned around, and his eyes were steel. Do you remember what you said to me that day, Patricia? Patricia's hands shook as she gripped her purse tighter. We were emotional, stressed about money. You said I wasn't your real son. You said you should have aborted me before birth. Harvey's voice remained level, almost conversational. Those are very specific words, Patricia. They tend to stick with a person. Charles tried to intervene. Harvey, we were wrong. We can see that now. You've accomplished incredible things. But Billy, he's struggling. The whole family is struggling. The whole family. Harvey returned to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. Marcus, could you please escort Mr. and Mrs. Stout to the lobby? They seem to be lost. Wait. Patricia stood abruptly. Please, Harvey. We're desperate. The bank is going to foreclose next month. We'll lose everything. Harvey looked at them for a long moment. Two people who'd once held absolute power over his world, now reduced to begging in his office. The moment should have felt triumphant, but instead it felt hollow. You're right about one thing, Harvey said finally. You will lose everything, but not because I won't help you. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out another folder. You'll lose everything because choices have consequences and you're finally experiencing yours. Marcus appeared at the door with two security guards. Harvey nodded toward his parents. Marcus, please make sure Mr. and Mrs. Stout find their way out safely, and mark them in the system as visitors who are not to be admitted again without my express permission. As the security guard approached, Charles made one last desperate attempt. Harvey, please. We know we hurt you, but we're your parents. We raised you. Harvey smiled then. It was the coldest expression his parents had ever seen. No, he said quietly. You destroyed me. I raised myself. As they were escorted out, Harvey could hear Patricia sobbing in the corridor. He felt nothing at the sound. Not satisfaction, not guilt, nothing at all. That part of him had died 15 years ago on a cold October day in Sacramento. Clark remained in his chair, watching his friend carefully. That was brutal, even for you. That was mercy, Harvey corrected. Brutal comes next. Through his window, Harvey watched his parents emerge onto the sidewalk below, two small figures dwarfed by the tower he'd built. They looked lost, broken, exactly as he'd once looked standing in their driveway with a single suitcase and nowhere to go. The difference was that Harvey had learned to turn pain into power. They were about to learn what it felt like when power turned against them. Chapter 4. The Investigation. 2 weeks after his parents' visit, Harvey sat in his private conference room with a team of 5 people who specialized in information that most companies would never need. Trevor McKinney, the private investigator who'd been tracking the Stout family finances for months, spread documents across the polished table like a general planning a campaign. The situation is worse than we initially thought, Trevor began, his gravelly voice the product of too many years spent in smoky bars gathering intelligence. At 52, he was Harvey's go-to source for information that existed in shadows and gray areas. Billy's borrowed against properties he doesn't technically own, used fake financial statements to secure loans, and there's evidence he's been skimming from employee payroll taxes. Harvey examined photographs of Billy entering various bank offices, always looking desperate. Elaborate on the tax situation. Federal and state agencies are already investigating. Billy thought he could pay it back before anyone noticed, but he's short about $600,000. That's felony territory. Aaron Griffith, Harvey's head of legal affairs, looked up from his tablet. The payroll tax issue gives us leverage, but we need to be careful about how we use it. There's more, Trevor continued. I've been monitoring communications between Billy and your parents. They're planning to approach you directly, in person. Apparently, Patricia convinced Charles that you still have feelings for them somewhere deep down. Clark shook his head. The delusion is impressive. It gets better, Trevor said, pulling out another file. Eugene Winter, their current accountant, has been advising them to file bankruptcy and start fresh. But there's a complication. They owe money to some very unpleasant people. Harvey raised an eyebrow. Explain. Billy borrowed $200,000 from Kurt Jones, who runs a loan operation that doesn't advertise in newspapers, if you catch my meaning. Jones isn't the type to write off bad debt as a loss for tax purposes. The room fell silent. Mel James, Harvey's head of security and a former Navy SEAL, spoke up. Jones has a reputation. People who default on his loans tend to have accidents. How much time do they have? Harvey asked. Jones gave them until Thanksgiving to pay in full, plus interest, Trevor replied. That's about 5 weeks. Harvey steepled his fingers, processing this new information. His original plan had been simple. Watch his family's empire crumble while he remained safely above the fray. But the involvement of Kurt Jones changed the dynamics significantly. What do we know about Jones's operation? Mel consulted his own notes. Jones runs his business through 3 shell companies, all legitimate on paper. He's smart, careful, and has never been successfully prosecuted for anything. But his collection methods are thorough. Harvey stood and walked to the conference room's window wall. Below, the city hummed with life and commerce, millions of people pursuing their own ambitions and dreams. Somewhere out there, his parents were probably lying awake worrying about their future, just as he'd once done. Trevor, I want detailed financial records on Jones's operation. Everything. How he moves money, who he works with, what properties he owns. That's dangerous territory, Harvey, Aaron warned. Jones isn't someone you want to cross accidentally. I'm not planning to cross him, Harvey said. I'm planning to use him. Clark leaned forward. What are you thinking? Harvey turned back to the group. Billy borrowed money from Jones using fake financial statements. That makes it fraud. Jones doesn't know he was lied to, which means when Billy inevitably defaults, Jones will assume he was deliberately scammed. You want to accelerate their conflict, Trevor said, understanding immediately. I want to provide Jones with accurate information about his debtor, Harvey corrected. It's really just good business ethics. Mel looked uncomfortable. Harvey, these aren't corporate competitors we're talking about. Jones's people have been known to put folks in hospitals. Billy made his choices, Harvey said coldly. He chose to defraud federal agencies. He chose to lie to dangerous people. I'm simply ensuring that truth comes to light. Aaron was taking notes rapidly. We'll need to be very careful about how information reaches Jones. Any connection to us could create legal exposure. Leave that to me, Trevor said. I know someone who knows someone. Jones will get the real numbers on Billy's finances, and it'll look like routine due diligence he should have done before making the loan. Harvey returned to his seat. What about employee protections for the restaurant staff? This surprised everyone. Clark especially looked confused. You're worried about Billy's employees? I'm worried about innocent people losing their jobs because of Billy's incompetence, Harvey clarified. Most of those people are hourly workers with families. They didn't choose to get involved in Billy's mess. It was typical Harvey, ruthless toward those who'd wronged him, but protective of bystanders caught in the crossfire. He'd built stout dynamics with the same philosophy, treating employees like family while crushing competitors without mercy. I can set up an employment transition fund, Aaron offered. Anonymous donations to help restaurant workers find new positions. Do it, Harvey agreed. Now, what about my parents' house? Trevor consulted another file. They've got about 6 weeks before the bank finalizes foreclosure proceedings. The mortgage company is Pacific Coast Financial, a mid-sized operation out of Los Angeles. Harvey smiled for the first time during the meeting. Pacific Coast Financial. I'm familiar with them. We handle their IT infrastructure through our subsidiary. The implications of this hung in the air. Clark grinned. You're thinking of buying the debt. I'm thinking of acquiring distressed assets at fair market value, Harvey said. It's just good business. As the meeting concluded and the team dispersed to their various assignments, Harvey remained in the conference room alone. Through the glass walls, he could see his employees working late, building something meaningful and lasting. Every person in this building had been chosen for their skills, dedication, and integrity. They were his real family now. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Please call me. We need to talk. Billy. Harvey deleted the message without reading it twice. Some conversations were 15 years too late. Chapter 5. The trap is set. Billy Stout paced outside the downtown Sacramento office building, checking his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. The meeting with Trevor McKinney's mysterious client was scheduled for 3 p.m., and Billy had arrived 30 minutes early out of sheer desperation. His phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from creditors, but one call had made his blood run cold. Kurt Jones himself had called to check in on the loan repayment schedule. Jones's voice had been friendly, almost grandfatherly, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd been openly threatening. Billy, my boy, Jones had said, I hope you're making progress on our little arrangement. Thanksgiving is coming up fast, and I'd hate for family troubles to interfere with the holiday spirit. Now, standing outside the office building, Billy felt the weight of his family's future pressing down on him like a physical force. The meeting with McKinney's client was their last hope. At exactly 3 p.m., Billy was escorted to a conference room where Trevor McKinney waited with a man introduced only as Mr. Coleman. Coleman was thin, well-dressed, and spoke with the precise diction of someone comfortable with large financial transactions. Mr. Stout, Coleman began, I represent interests that specialize in acquiring undervalued restaurant properties in distressed situations. We've been watching Stout Family Kitchens for some time. Billy's heart jumped. You're interested in buying? Potentially. But first, we need complete transparency about your financial situation. Our due diligence has revealed some concerning discrepancies. Coleman slid a folder across the table. Billy opened it to find detailed financial records, far more detailed than anything he'd provided to any previous potential investor. How did you get these numbers? We have our sources, Coleman replied smoothly. The question is whether these represent the complete picture of your liabilities. Billy studied the documents. They were accurate, almost frighteningly so. Someone had access to information that should have been private. There are some additional concerns, Coleman continued. Federal tax obligations, for instance, and certain private loans that weren't disclosed in your initial business summary. The mention of private loans made Billy's stomach drop. Those are separate obligations. Mr. Stout, we can't acquire properties with undisclosed liens or debts. If we're going to move forward, we need complete honesty about all obligations, including any arrangements with private lenders like Kurt Jones. Billy's face went white. How could they possibly know about Jones? I see that name means something to you, Coleman observed. Mr. McKinney, perhaps you could explain our discovery process. Trevor leaned forward. Our research indicates you borrowed $200,000 from Jones using financial statements that didn't accurately reflect your company's position. That's a serious legal exposure for any potential buyer. Billy felt trapped. If he admitted to the Jones loan and the false statements, he'd be confessing to fraud. If he denied it, these people clearly had enough information to walk away. What are you suggesting? Coleman opened his briefcase and removed a different set of documents. We're prepared to make an offer, but it requires full disclosure and cooperation. We'll purchase all 47 restaurant properties for $2.2 million, enough to cover your legitimate business debts and provide a small cushion for transition. Billy's heart sank. The properties were worth at least $12 million in a normal market, but $2.2 million was better than bankruptcy. However, Coleman continued, this offer requires immediate acceptance and complete honesty about all financial obligations. We cannot protect you from private arrangements that were entered into fraudulently. What does that mean? Trevor answered. It means Kurt Jones is going to learn the truth about your financial statements, whether this deal goes through or not. Someone's already compiled the real numbers, and word has a way of getting around in certain circles. Billy realized he was being maneuvered into an impossible position. Accept the lowball offer and lose everything while still facing Jones's wrath over the false financial statements, or reject it and face both bankruptcy and Jones's collection methods. I need time to think. Time is something you don't have, Coleman interrupted. This offer expires at close of business today. After that, we move on to other opportunities. Billy called his parents from the parking lot, his hands shaking as he dialed. They're offering $2.2 million for everything, he told his father. That's not enough to save the house and cover Billy's debts, Charles said, his voice hollow with defeat. Dad, there's something else. They know about the Kurt Jones loan, and they know about the financial statements I used to get it. A long silence. Finally, Charles spoke. What are you saying? I'm saying Jones is going to find out I lied to him about the business numbers. And when he does, Billy couldn't finish the sentence. Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse, Harvey received updates from his team with the satisfaction of a chess master watching his opponent discover they were in checkmate. The offer to Billy was real. $2.2 million would indeed cover the legitimate business debts. But Harvey's acquisition of those restaurant properties was just the opening move in a larger game. Kurt Jones would receive an anonymous package tomorrow containing Billy's real financial records, along with copies of the false statements used to secure the loan. Jones would realize he'd been defrauded, and his response would be swift and unforgiving. Meanwhile, Pacific Coast Financial, the company holding his parents' mortgage, would receive an offer to purchase their distressed debt portfolio at above-market rates. An offer they couldn't refuse, especially when it came from shell company controlled by Stout Dynamics. By Thanksgiving, Harvey would own his childhood home, Billy would be facing federal charges and Kurt Jones's wrath, and his parents would understand exactly what it felt like to lose everything. The best part was that every move was perfectly legal. Harvey wasn't breaking any laws. He was simply allowing the consequences of his family's choices to unfold naturally. Justice, Harvey had learned, didn't require vengeance. It simply required patience and precise timing. As the sun set over San Francisco, Harvey poured himself a glass of 25-year-old scotch and toasted the empty room. To family, he said quietly, and drained the glass. Chapter 6, The News Titans. Kurt Jones received the anonymous package on a Wednesday morning that started like any other. At 63, Jones had been in the private lending business for over 30 years, and he prided himself on accurate risk assessment. He didn't make loans to people who couldn't pay them back, and he certainly didn't appreciate being lied to. The package contained no return address, just a manila envelope with his name typed on a plain white label. Inside, he found financial documents, bank statements, and tax records that told a very different story than the one Billy Stout had presented 6 months earlier. Jones spread the documents across his desk in his modest Stockton office. According to Billy's original application, Stout Family Kitchens had been generating steady profits with minor seasonal fluctuations. The real documents told a different story entirely. Massive losses, defaulted payments, and a business model that had been failing for over 2 years. He picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Daryl, it's Kurt. I need you to verify some information for me." Daryl Lee was Jones's most trusted investigator, a former cop who developed a talent for finding information that people preferred to keep hidden. 20 minutes later, Daryl called back with confirmation. "Boss, the numbers are real. Billy Stout's been lying through his teeth. The restaurants are bleeding money. He's behind on federal taxes, and word is he's looking to sell everything and disappear." Jones felt the familiar cold anger that had served him well in business. He'd built his reputation on fair dealing and honest assessment of risk. Clients who tried to scam him discovered that the interest on their loans was the least of their problems. What's the family situation? Parents mortgaged their house to help him expand last year. They're facing foreclosure. Stout's got a brother who's apparently some big-shot tech guy, but they haven't spoken in years. Find Billy Stout. Today, while Jones was learning the truth about his loan, Charles and Patricia Stout were discovering their own unpleasant reality. The phone call from Pacific Coast Financial came during their afternoon news program. interrupting their ritual of worrying about bills they couldn't pay. Mrs. Stout, this is Melissa Page from Pacific Coast Financial. I'm calling to inform you that your mortgage debt has been acquired by a private investment firm. You'll be receiving official documentation in the mail, but I wanted to reach out personally. Patricia gripped the phone tighter. What does that mean? It means your loan has been sold to new owners. The terms remain the same for now, but you'll be dealing with a different company going forward. After Patricia hung up, she and Charles sat in their living room, the same room where they destroyed their relationship with Harvey 15 years earlier. The furniture was older now, the carpet more worn, but the family photos on the mantel remained the same. Billy's achievements were prominently displayed. His high school graduation, the opening of his first restaurant, various community awards. There were no photos of Harvey after his 22nd birthday. What if this is connected to Harvey? Patricia asked quietly. Charles shook his head. Harvey's in technology, not real estate. Besides, he made it clear he wants nothing to do with us. But Patricia couldn't shake the feeling that their world was closing in around them with too much precision to be coincidental. The timing of everything, the restaurant failures, the mortgage sale, Billy's mysterious investor meetings, felt orchestrated. Meanwhile, Billy was learning that desperation made people careless. The meeting with Coleman hadn't led to a purchase offer, despite promises of follow-up communication. Instead, Billy had spent 2 weeks fielding increasingly aggressive calls from creditors and trying to keep his restaurants operational with skeleton crews. The call from Kurt Jones came while Billy was closing his flagship location for the final time. Billy, my friend, we need to talk. Mr. Jones, I was just going to call you. I'm expecting some money from an investor this week. Billy, stop talking. Jones's voice was soft, almost paternal. I'm at your downtown location. Come alone. Billy drove through Sacramento traffic with his heart hammering against his ribs. Jones's tone had been friendly, but Billy wasn't naive enough to miss the underlying menace. He found Jones sitting in a booth near the window, a small, neat man in his 60s who looked more like a retired accountant than someone who could destroy lives with a phone call. Jones was reading a newspaper and sipping coffee from Billy's restaurant's signature mug. Sit down, son, Jones said without looking up from his paper. Coffee's good. Shame about the business model. Billy slid into the opposite seat. Mr. Jones, if you give me another month. Billy. Jones folded his newspaper precisely and looked up with pale blue eyes that seemed to see everything. Do you remember what I told you when we first met? About honesty being the foundation of all good business relationships. Billy nodded, not trusting his voice. Good. Because I've recently learned some interesting things about your financial situation. Things that suggest our initial conversation wasn't entirely truthful. Jones reached into his jacket and pulled out copies of the same documents Harvey's team had been studying for weeks. Billy recognized his real financial statements immediately. Now, I'm a reasonable man, Jones continued. I understand that businesses sometimes exaggerate their prospects to secure funding. But there's a difference between optimism and fraud. Wouldn't you agree? Billy's mouth was dry. Mr. Jones, I can explain. The federal government might be interested in your explanations, Billy. Tax evasion, loan fraud, falsifying financial documents. These are serious charges. The kind that carry real prison time. Billy felt the world spinning around him. What do you want? Jones smiled, and it was genuinely warm. I want my money, of course. $200,000. Plus the agreed-upon interest. Call it $250 total. I don't have that kind of cash. No, you don't. But I've been thinking about solutions. Jones leaned forward conspiratorially. Your brother Harvey has done quite well for himself, hasn't he? Billy stared at him. Harvey won't help us. We had a falling out years ago. Family disputes can be so unfortunate, Jones said sympathetically. But blood is blood, Billy. And when family members are facing serious legal troubles, the kind that might result in federal prison sentences, sometimes old grudges get set aside. You want me to ask Harvey for the money. I want you to have an honest conversation with your brother about your situation, about what happens to people who defraud federal agencies, about what happens to people who lie to folks like me. Jones stood up, leaving a $5 tip on the table. Families should look out for each other, don't you think? As Jones walked toward the exit, He paused at Billy's shoulder. "Oh, and Billy? I'd suggest having that conversation soon. My patience isn't infinite, and neither is the government statute of limitations." After Jones left, Billy sat alone in his failing restaurant, surrounded by the dreams he'd built on borrowed money and broken promises. For the first time since this nightmare began, he found himself thinking about Harvey not as the brother who'd made it big, but as the brother he'd helped destroy. Harvey had warned him about everything that was now happening. The overexpansion, the debt-to-equity ratios, the market saturation. Billy had ignored it all, dismissed Harvey's concerns as jealousy from someone who didn't understand real business. Now Billy understood that Harvey had been trying to save him from exactly this situation. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Harvey wasn't just successful despite their family's treatment of him. Harvey was successful because of it. Every rejection, every dismissal, every cruel word had forged him into someone who could see danger and opportunity with perfect clarity. Billy pulled out his phone and stared at Harvey's contact information, a number he hadn't called in 15 years. His finger hovered over the call button. Somewhere across town, Harvey Stout was having dinner with his executive team, celebrating another successful quarter while his childhood family's world collapsed exactly as he'd planned. The trap was closing, and there was nowhere left to run. Chapter 7: The Prodigal Family. The call came on a rainy Thursday evening while Harvey was reviewing acquisition proposals in his home office. He'd been expecting it for days, had even taken bets with Clark on exactly when his phone would ring. "Harvey." Billy's voice was barely above a whisper. It's Billy." Harvey leaned back in his leather chair, looking out at the storm clouds gathering over the Golden Gate Bridge. "Billy, it's been a while." "Harvey, we need to talk. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm in serious trouble. I heard about the restaurants. Tough market for mid-tier dining these days." Billy was quiet for a moment, probably surprised by Harvey's casual tone. "You heard about the restaurants? I make it my business to know what's happening in local industries. 47 locations seemed aggressive for the market size. Harvey, there's more. I borrowed money from some people, dangerous people, and the financial statements I used to get the loan, they weren't accurate." Harvey allowed himself a small smile. Billy was confessing to fraud without being asked, probably hoping his brother's tech background meant he didn't understand the implications. "That sounds complicated, Billy. I'm facing federal charges for the tax thing, and Kurt Jones, the guy I borrowed from, he found out about the false statements. He wants his money by Thanksgiving, and if I don't pay..." Billy's voice cracked. "Harvey, I think he might hurt Mom and Dad." Now Harvey sat up straighter. This was an interesting development he hadn't anticipated. "Jones threatened our parents?" "Not directly, but he made it clear that family members sometimes suffer for debts they didn't personally incur." "Harvey, I know we treated you terribly. I know we don't deserve your help. But Mom and Dad, they could lose everything. They could get hurt." Harvey was quiet for a long moment, processing this new information. His plan had been to watch his family's financial destruction from a safe distance, but physical threats against his parents complicated things. Despite everything they'd done to him, Harvey found he wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea of Charles and Patricia being physically harmed. Financially ruined? Absolutely. Forced to face the consequences of their choices? Without question. But actual violence crossed a line he wasn't prepared to step over. "How much do you owe Jones?" $250 total. "Harvey, I know it's a lot of money." "Billy." Harvey's voice cut through his brother's rambling. "Do you remember what you said to me at Grandpa Joe's funeral?" Billy was quiet. "You said I should be grateful that Mom and Dad kept me around as long as they did. That some families would have just dropped me at a fire station and never looked back." "Harvey, I was 21. I was stupid." "You were honest," Harvey corrected. "Maybe for the first and last time in your life, you were completely honest about how this family saw me." "Please, Harvey, I'll sign over whatever's left of the business to you. I'll work for you, pay you back however you want. Just please don't let them get hurt because of my mistakes." Harvey stood and walked to his window. The storm was intensifying, rain lashing against the glass like tears. In the distance, he could see the lights of Oakland, where he'd once lived in a studio apartment with a leaking roof and a space heater that barely worked. "Meet me tomorrow in my office." 2 p.m. Come alone. Harvey, thank you. I know you don't owe us anything. No, Harvey said quietly. I don't owe you anything. But I owe myself the satisfaction of looking you in the eye when I explain exactly how this is going to work. Harvey hung up without saying goodbye. The next afternoon, Billy stood in the same office where his parents had begged for help 2 weeks earlier. But this time, he wasn't alone with Harvey. Clark Fisher sat in one of the guest chairs, along with 2 people Billy didn't recognize. A woman in an expensive suit who looked like a lawyer, and a man with the bearing of someone accustomed to violence. Billy, meet my team, Harvey said without standing. Clark Fisher, my COO, Aaron Griffith, head of legal, and Mel James, head of security. Billy shook hands nervously, aware that he was outnumbered and outclassed in every possible way. Have a seat, Harvey said. We have several things to discuss. Aaron opened a folder and slid documents across the table. These are the purchase agreements for Stout Family Kitchens. All 47 locations, for $2.2 million as discussed. Billy scanned the documents. Everything seemed straightforward until he reached the employment section. It says here that all current employees will be retained with improved benefits packages. That's correct, Harvey said. Unlike you, I don't believe in punishing innocent people for management failures. The bar hit home, but Billy was too desperate to feel insulted. What about the Kurt Jones situation? Mel spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd faced down actual danger. Jones has been provided with accurate information about your financial misrepresentations. He's upset. What does that mean? Harvey leaned forward. It means Kurt Jones now understands that you defrauded him using false financial statements. He's demanding immediate payment and considering his legal options. Billy felt the room spinning. His legal options? Jones operates several legitimate businesses, Aaron explained. He's perfectly within his rights to pursue civil and criminal remedies for loan fraud. The false statements you provided constitute multiple felonies under state and federal law. But if I sign over the restaurant sale covers your legitimate business debts, Harvey interrupted. It doesn't address the federal tax evasion charges you're facing, and it certainly doesn't resolve your fraudulent misrepresentation to Jones. Billy stared at his brother. Harvey's expression was perfectly calm, almost bored, as if they were discussing quarterly projections rather than Billy's imminent destruction. What do you want from me, Harvey? I want you to understand something very important, Harvey said, standing and walking around the desk. 15 years ago, you helped our parents steal my inheritance and cast me out like garbage. You called me worthless, said I'd never amount to anything, laughed when they slapped me for daring to object. Harvey stopped directly in front of Billy's chair, looking down at him like a judge delivering a sentence. I want you to understand that every moment of suffering you're experiencing right now, every sleepless night, every creditor's call, every moment of terror about Jones's threats, is interest on a debt you incurred 15 years ago. Billy looked up at his brother with growing horror. You did this. You orchestrated all of this. Harvey smiled for the first time since Billy had arrived. I didn't orchestrate anything, Billy. I simply allowed the truth to surface. You defrauded federal agencies. That was your choice. You lied to Kurt Jones. That was your choice. You built an unsustainable business model on borrowed money. That was your choice. But you could have warned me. You could have helped. The way you helped me. Harvey's voice turned ice cold. The way you stood by and watched while our parents destroyed my life. Clark and the others watched in silence as 15 years of suppressed anger finally found its voice. I begged you, Billy. After they took the inheritance, after they threw me out, I begged you to talk to them. Do you remember what you said? Billy's face had gone ashen. You said I should learn to stand on my own 2 feet. You said real men don't need family money to succeed. Harvey leaned down, bringing his face level with Billy's. Congratulations, brother. You're about to learn exactly what that feels like. The intercom buzzed, and Marcus's voice filled the room. Mr. Stout, there are federal agents here to see Mr. Billy Stout. Harvey straightened and returned to his desk. Send them up, Marcus. Billy shot to his feet. Harvey, please. Don't let them take me. I'll do anything. You'll face the consequences of your actions like an adult, Harvey said calmly. Just like I had to when our family abandoned me. Three FBI agents entered the office, led by a woman in her 40s who carried herself with quiet authority. Billy Stout, I'm Agent Hannah McClain. You're under arrest for federal tax evasion and bank fraud. As they read Billy his rights and placed him in handcuffs, he looked back at Harvey with a mixture of fear and dawning understanding. This isn't over, Billy said desperately. Mom and Dad still need help. Whatever you think I deserve, they don't deserve this. Harvey watched his brother being led away by federal agents, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. They made their choice 15 years ago, Billy. Everything that happens next is just the bill coming due. After the agents left with Billy, Clark looked at his friend with concern. The parents are about to lose their house, and now their son is facing federal charges. Don't you think that's enough? Harvey was already opening another folder on his desk. Clark, do you remember the first time you met my parents? Your college graduation. They spent the entire ceremony talking about Billy's restaurant plans while you graduated summa cum laude with dual degrees. Do you remember what my mother said when I told her about my job offer from Google? Clark's face darkened. She said it was probably just a pity hire because you were adopted. 15 years of that, Clark. 15 years of being told I was worthless, unwanted, a mistake. Harvey looked up from his documents. They chose their real son over me at every opportunity. Now they get to live with that choice. As the storm raged outside, Harvey Stout continued planning the final phase of his revenge. Billy's arrest was just the beginning. His parents would soon learn that the house they'd mortgaged to help their golden son now belonged to the son they'd thrown away. And unlike their mercy toward him 15 years ago, Harvey's justice would be absolute. Chapter 8. The Final Reckoning. The Sacramento County Courthouse buzzed with activity on the cold December morning when Billy Stout's preliminary hearing was scheduled. Harvey sat in the gallery's back row, wearing dark sunglasses and a simple black suit that made him virtually invisible among the lawyers and family members crowding the benches. He hadn't come to gloat. He'd come to witness the moment when his brother finally understood the full scope of consequences that followed choices made in ignorance and cruelty. Billy looked terrible. 3 weeks in county lockup had stripped away his remaining pretenses. His hair was unwashed. His public defender looked overworked and underpaid, and his orange jumpsuit hung loosely on a frame that had lost considerable weight. Charles and Patricia Stout sat in the front row, holding hands like children afraid of the dark. They'd aged a decade in the past month. The foreclosure proceedings on their house had begun the previous week, and Billy's legal fees were consuming what little savings they had left. Harvey watched as the prosecutor outlined the charges: 18 counts of federal tax evasion, 12 counts of bank fraud, and 6 counts of providing false statements to financial institutions. The evidence was overwhelming. Billy had left a paper trail that even a first-year law student could follow. Your Honor, Billy's public defender began, my client was operating under extreme financial pressure and made regrettable decisions in an attempt to save jobs for 47 restaurant locations, employing over 600 people. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, looked unimpressed. Mr. Stout, the government is alleging that you systematically defrauded federal agencies and multiple banks over a period of 3 years. These aren't momentary lapses in judgment. As the hearing progressed, Harvey felt someone slide into the seat next to him. Kurt Jones, immaculately dressed despite the early hour, nodded politely. Mr. Stout, Jones said quietly, I thought I might find you here. Harvey kept his eyes on the proceedings. Mr. Jones, I trust your business matters are resolving satisfactorily. Indeed they are. Young Billy's assets are being liquidated to cover what he legitimately owes. Unfortunately, the fraudulent nature of our initial transaction complicates any hopes of full recovery. I imagine it does. Jones was quiet for a moment, watching Billy's parents comfort each other in the front row. It's interesting how families work, isn't it? Some people will sacrifice everything for children who don't deserve it, while casting aside children who do. Harvey glanced at Jones, surprised by the insight. I did my research on you, Mr. Stout. MIT graduate, Google alumnus, built a $300 million company from scratch, all while your family invested in. Jones gestured toward Billy at the defendant's table, That family loyalty can be blind, Harvey said. Indeed. But justice has perfect vision. Jones stood as the judge called a recess. Your brother will likely serve 18 months to 3 years, depending on cooperation and plea negotiations. Plenty of time for reflection. As Jones left, Harvey remained seated, watching his parents embrace Billy during the brief recess. Even now, facing overwhelming evidence of their golden son's failures and crimes, they stood by him with unwavering support. It was everything Harvey had needed from them 15 years ago and had never received. That evening, Harvey stood on the steps of his childhood home for the first time since his 23rd birthday. The house looked smaller than he remembered, more worn, with a foreclosure notice prominently posted on the front door. Charles answered Harvey's knock, his face cycling through surprise, hope, and resignation in rapid succession. "Harvey, we didn't expect to see you. May I come in?" The living room was exactly as Harvey remembered it, down to the same furniture arrangement and family photos on the mantel. The only difference was the stack of legal documents on the coffee table and the tangible weight of desperation hanging in the air. Patricia emerged from the kitchen, moving slowly like someone recovering from a long illness. "Harvey, what are you doing here?" Harvey remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "I came to discuss your housing situation." Charles gestured weakly toward the foreclosure notice. "The bank sold our mortgage to some investment company. They're not interested in negotiating payment plans." "Golden Gate Property Holdings," Harvey said. "They specialize in distressed real estate acquisition." "You know about them?" Patricia asked. "I am them," Harvey said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia sank into her chair as if her legs could no longer support her weight. "You own our mortgage?" "I own your debt, yes. All of it." Harvey pulled out a folder and set it on the coffee table next to their legal documents. "Your mortgage balance, the second mortgage you took out for Billy's expansion, the home equity line of credit. Everything." Charles opened the folder with shaking hands. The documents showed every detail of their financial obligations, now held by subsidiaries of Harvey's company. "What?" Patricia whispered. Harvey looked around the room, taking in the photos of Billy's achievements, the furniture he'd grown up with, the space where his family had told him he wasn't wanted. 15 years ago, you made a choice in this room. You chose Billy over me, completely and permanently. You took my inheritance, money Grandpa Joe specifically left to me, and gave it to him because he was your real son. Harvey, we were wrong." "Yes, you were. But that's not why I'm here." Harvey sat down across from them, his posture relaxed but his eyes intense. "I'm here because Billy borrowed money from Kurt Jones using fraudulent financial statements, and Jones believes family members should be held responsible for each other's debts." Patricia's face went white. "What does that mean?" "It means Jones thinks I should pay Billy's debts because we're family. He suggested that bad things might happen to Billy's parents if his debts remain unpaid." Charles found his voice. "Harvey, we never asked for that. We never wanted you involved." "No, you never wanted me involved in anything," Harvey agreed. "But you involved me the moment you decided Billy was worth my grandfather's money and I wasn't." Harvey stood and walked to the mantel, looking at the photos of Billy's life that dominated the display. In 15 years, his parents had never taken a single photo of Harvey's achievements. "I have a proposal," Harvey said, turning back to face them. "I will pay Billy's debt to Kurt Jones in full. I will also restructure your mortgage through my company at a manageable payment schedule that will allow you to keep this house." Hope flickered in both their faces. "In exchange," Harvey continued, "you will transfer ownership of this house to me immediately. You'll continue living here as tenants, but you'll pay rent monthly like any other tenants. The rent will be exactly what your mortgage payment was before Billy's problems started." "That's actually generous," Charles said cautiously. "There's more," Harvey said. "You'll also sign documents acknowledging that the inheritance you took from me and gave to Billy was obtained through emotional manipulation and possibly elder abuse of my grandfather." Patricia stood up sharply. "Elder abuse? Harvey, that's not. My grandfather specifically left that money to me because he believed I had the intelligence and integrity to build something meaningful with it. You convinced him to change his will 3 weeks before he died, when he was medicated and confused. Harvey's voice remained calm. I have documentation of your visits to his care facility during his final weeks, including recordings of you explaining why Billy was the better choice for inheritance. The blood drained from Patricia's face. Those recordings would be devastating if they ever became public. You're blackmailing us, Charles said. I'm offering you a choice, Harvey corrected. Sign the documents, keep your house, and live comfortably as my tenants. Or refuse, face foreclosure, watch Billy go to prison without protection from Jones's people, and potentially face criminal charges for elder abuse. Harvey pulled out his phone and showed them a photo. It was Billy in county lockup, sporting a black eye and split lip. Fraudsters aren't popular in jail, Harvey said. And they're even less popular when they owe money to people like Jones on the outside. Patricia began crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that came from watching your world collapse in real time. This is revenge, she choked out. You're destroying our family for revenge. Harvey looked at her with something approaching pity. Patricia, I'm not destroying your family. I'm simply allowing you to experience what I experienced 15 years ago. The realization that family loyalty is conditional and you've failed to meet the conditions. He walked to the door, then paused. The documents will be delivered tomorrow. You have 24 hours to decide whether you want to be my tenants or Kurt, Jones's problem. As Harvey left his childhood home for what would likely be the last time, he felt an unexpected sense of completion. Not satisfaction, not happiness, but the quiet peace that came from closing a chapter that had been left unfinished for far too long. Behind him, his parents held each other and wept for the son they'd thrown away and the son they'd failed to raise properly. Both were lost to them now, but only one loss was their own fault. Chapter 9. The Price of Truth. 6 months later, Harvey sat in his office reviewing the latest reports from his expanding empire. Stout Dynamics had acquired 2 competitors, launched a revolutionary supply chain management platform, and secured government contracts worth over $50 million. The former Stout family kitchen properties had been converted into co-working spaces for tech startups, providing affordable office space and creating hundreds of new jobs. Billy had been sentenced to 30 months in federal prison with the possibility of early release for good behavior. The federal prosecutor had been surprisingly lenient, considering Billy's cooperation in providing information about other businesses using similar fraudulent practices. Charles and Patricia Stout had signed Harvey's documents and were now tenants in their former home. They paid their rent on time, kept the property maintained, and never contacted Harvey directly. The arrangement was handled through a property management company that provided a buffer between Harvey and the people who'd once been his family. The monthly rent they paid was exactly what their mortgage had been before Billy's troubles. A detail Harvey had specifically designed to remind them daily of a life they could have kept if they'd made different choices. A knock on his office door interrupted Harvey's thoughts. Marcus entered with a concerned expression. Mr. Stout, there's a young woman here to see you. She says she's Billy's daughter. Harvey looked up sharply. Billy had never mentioned having children, but then again, they hadn't exactly been exchanging Christmas cards. Her name? Susan Stout. She's 18, says she just graduated high school. Harvey had never met his niece. Billy's relationship with women had always been complicated, and Harvey had assumed any children were being raised by ex-girlfriends with minimal involvement from Billy. Send her in. Susan Stout was tall like her father, but carried herself with a confidence Billy had never possessed. She had intelligent eyes and wore simple clothes that suggested practicality over fashion. She entered Harvey's office without intimidation, looking around with curiosity rather than awe. Uncle Harvey, she said, extending her hand for a formal handshake. I'm Susan. I think it's time we met. Harvey gestured to a chair. I wasn't aware Billy had children. He doesn't exactly advertise his failures as a father, Susan said dryly. I've been raised mostly by my mom, Carla Fowler, in Portland. Dad sends money when he can, visits maybe twice a year. I see. And what brings you to San Francisco? Susan looked directly at him with an unsettling intensity. I wanted to meet the uncle who destroyed my father's life. Harvey studied his niece carefully. She didn't seem angry, just curious. Is that what Billy told you? Dad doesn't tell me anything useful. But I'm not stupid, and I know how to research. Susan pulled out a tablet and opened a folder. Grandfather's inheritance, the family conflict, your parents' treatment of you, Dad's fraudulent business practices. I've pieced together most of the story. Harvey was impressed despite himself. And what conclusion have you reached? That Dad deserved what happened to him, but Grandma and Grandpa probably didn't deserve to lose their house. They didn't lose their house. They're living in it right now, as tenants to their estranged son, paying rent for a house they own for 30 years. Susan closed her tablet. It's psychologically devastating, even if it's financially sustainable. Harvey leaned back in his chair. This girl was sharper than anyone in her family had ever been. What do you want from me, Susan? I want to understand whether my uncle is someone who destroys people for sport, or someone who ensures actions have consequences. She met his gaze steadily. Because if it's the first one, I need to know what kind of man I'm related to. If it's the second one, I'd like to propose something. I'm listening. Susan pulled out a business plan, professionally bound and clearly well-researched. I'm starting college in January, studying business and computer science at UC Berkeley. I've got a 4-year academic scholarship, but I need startup capital for a mobile app I've been developing. Harvey looked at the business plan's cover page. Food share, connecting food service workers with flexible employment opportunities. You want me to invest in your business? I want you to consider whether investing in family members who actually have viable business models and honest intentions might be more satisfying than punishing family members who don't. Harvey opened the business plan and began reading. The concept was intelligent. A platform that would help restaurant and catering workers find flexible employment across multiple businesses with built-in benefits portability and skills verification. The market research was thorough, the financial projections realistic, and the technical requirements well within his company's expertise. This is actually good, Harvey admitted. I know. I inherited Grandfather Joe's business sense, apparently, along with your ability to see problems clearly and Dad's charm when I need it. Susan smiled for the first time. I also inherited Mom's common sense, which is why I stayed away from Dad's business decisions. Harvey closed the business plan and looked at his niece with new respect. Why come to me? There are plenty of legitimate investors who would be interested in this. Because you understand what it's like to build something from nothing. Because you know the value of proving yourself without family connections. Susan paused. And because I think you're tired of being angry at people who can't change the past. Harvey was quiet for a long moment. What do you know about forgiveness, Susan? I know that forgiveness isn't about pretending bad things didn't happen. It's about choosing not to let those bad things control your future. She leaned forward. Dad made terrible choices, and he's paying for them. Grandma and Grandpa made terrible choices, and they're paying for them. You've made sure justice was served. And now you get to choose whether you want to spend the rest of your life being the son who was wronged, or the uncle who helped his niece build something meaningful. Harvey stood and walked to his window, looking down at the city he'd conquered through determination and careful planning. Susan was right. He had proven everything he needed to prove. His family's rejection had forged him into someone stronger than any of them could imagine, and their current suffering was proof that his path had been the right one. $50,000, Harvey said, turning back to face her. For 10% equity and a seat on your board of advisors. Susan smiled, and for the first time, Harvey saw a family resemblance he actually welcomed. Deal! They shook hands across his desk. Two members of the Stout family finally united by mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. Over the following months, Harvey gradually shifted his focus from revenge to rebuilding. He maintained the property arrangements with his parents. They remained tenants in their former home, learning daily what it meant to depend on someone else's mercy. But he stopped actively monitoring their suffering. Billy served 22 months of his sentence and emerged from prison a genuinely changed man. Harvey never spoke to him directly, but through Susan, he learned that Billy had used his time productively, earning his GED completion and taking business courses designed to help ex-felons start legitimate enterprises. When Billy was released, he found a job washing dishes at a restaurant in Portland, the same work Harvey had once done to survive. Billy never asked his brother for help, never sent messages through Susan, never attempted contact of any kind. It was, Harvey realized, the first intelligent decision Billy had made in years. Susan's app launched during her sophomore year and quickly gained traction among food service workers tired of unreliable scheduling and poor benefits. Harvey's investment had grown to be worth over $2 million by the time Susan graduated, and their business relationship had evolved into something approaching genuine family connection. On a warm Saturday morning in June, Harvey received an unexpected letter delivered to his home address. The return address showed Sacramento County Jail, and the handwriting was his father's. Inside was a single page. Asterisk Harvey. Susan showed me the success of her business and mentioned your guidance. I wanted you to know that Patricia and I are proud of what you've built and proud of the man you've become. We failed you as parents. We chose favorites. We believed the wrong things about what made someone valuable, and we destroyed our relationship with a son who deserved better. You don't owe us forgiveness, and we don't expect it. But we wanted you to know that we understand now what we lost when we cast you aside. Your grandfather would be proud of everything you've accomplished. Charles Asterisk. Harvey read the letter twice, then filed it away in his home office. He didn't respond, but he also didn't throw it away. Some wounds healed with time and distance. Others required acknowledgement and understanding. Harvey wasn't ready for reconciliation, and might never be, but the letter represented something important. His parents finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. That evening, Harvey had dinner with Susan at a small restaurant in Berkeley, one that employed several workers who'd found positions through her app. As they talked about her expansion plans and his company's latest innovations, Harvey realized that revenge had given him justice, but building something new had given him peace. The Stout family name, which had once been used to exclude him, now represented innovation, integrity, and success. His parents had wanted to preserve their family legacy by investing in Billy. Instead, they destroyed that legacy and rebuilt it in Harvey's image. As Susan laughed at one of his stories about the early days of his company, Harvey thought about the inheritance that had started it all. His grandfather's $150,000 had indeed changed someone's life, just not in the way his parents had intended. Billy had used it to build temporary success that crumbled under scrutiny. Harvey had used its absence to build permanent success that grew stronger with every challenge. In the end, both brothers had received exactly what they deserved. The family that had been broken by greed and favoritism had been reborn through merit and mutual respect. And Harvey Stout, the unwanted adopted son, had become the patriarch of something far more valuable than the biological family that had rejected him. Justice, Harvey had learned, wasn't about punishment. Justice was about truth, and truth, given enough time, always won. Epilogue. 5 years later, Harvey Stout stood on the deck of his new headquarters in downtown San Francisco, a 50-story tower that bore his name and housed not just Stout Dynamics, but Susan's company and a dozen other startups he'd helped launch. Below, the city sprawled in all directions, full of dreamers and builders and people determined to create something meaningful from nothing.